It was a humid night, thick with the smell of wet mud and stagnant water. The moon hung low in the sky, half hidden behind drifting clouds, throwing pale light over the narrow canal that ran past our village. Crickets screamed from the tall grass, and frogs croaked somewhere deep in the dark. That night, I went fishing with my uncle. We carried our conch, a traditional spear made of a long bamboo pole with a sharp iron tip attached to its end. It's the kind of weapon used to catch fish hiding in shallow waters. We had done it many times before, but something about that night already felt different. Quieter, heavier. As we walked along the muddy edge of the canal, water swirled around our ankles. My uncle whispered, "Don't make too much noise. The fish can feel it." I nodded, gripping the cold bamboo tightly. The light from our small lantern trembled on the water's surface, reflecting like 1,000 ghostly eyes. After a few minutes, I saw something move under the surface, large, slow, and glimmering. "Uncle, look, there." A massive fish was sliding through the dark water, its scales catching the moonlight like shards of glass. My uncle's eyes lit up. "That one's big. We'll catch it." We followed the fish deeper into the canal, our feet splashing softly. But the deeper we went, the more unfamiliar everything began to feel. The trees looked twisted, their branches reaching down like long arms. The sound of frogs and crickets faded until there was nothing left, only the sloshing of water and our own breathing. Then suddenly, the fish darted ahead fast. My uncle raised the conch and struck into the water with all his strength. The iron tip pierced through something soft, and the water turned black and thick. For a moment, I thought we'd done it, but then the water began to tremble. Something rose from it. At first, it looked like the fish, but it started to change shape. Its body stretching, twisting, bending backward. The air grew cold. The smell of rot filled my nose. The lantern flickered and went out. When the light came back, it was no fish. It was a man, or something that looked like one. His body was half submerged, skin pale like clay, eyes glowing faint red. The sharp iron of the conch was still stuck through his shoulder, but no blood came out. Just a dark, thick fluid that rippled on the water like oil. He turned his face slowly toward us, and when he smiled, it wasn't human. The corners of his mouth stretched far too wide, the teeth black and uneven. I froze. My uncle staggered back, dropping the spear. The figure whispered something, a sound that didn't belong to any language I knew. It echoed in my head, making my skin crawl. The water around us started to ripple, as if something massive was moving beneath the surface. Then the man began to laugh. A wet, gurgling laugh that grew louder and louder until it drowned out everything. The crickets, the wind, even the pounding of my heart. My uncle grabbed my arm and shouted, "Run!" We turned and splashed through the dark water, stumbling through mud and weeds. Behind us, the laughter followed closer, deeper, heavier until it sounded like it was coming from the water itself. When we finally looked back, the canal wasn't calm anymore. Waves were rising, crashing against the banks like the sea during a storm. The air smelled like salt, as if the river had suddenly turned into an ocean. That night, we didn't stop running. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear that voice echoing in the dark water. "You shouldn't have touched me." The moment we ran from that canal, everything around us started to change. The familiar path we knew, the one that always led back to the village, was gone. The trees no longer looked the same. Their trunks were darker, slick with something that smelled like decay. The air was heavy, and even though we were running, the sound of our feet didn't echo like it should. It was as if the world had folded into another one. My uncle kept panting beside me, his lantern swinging wildly, spilling dim orange light across the reeds. "Just keep moving," he shouted, his voice trembling. But every direction we turned looked identical. Same trees, same black water, same soundless air. The moon above us had disappeared completely, leaving only a dull gray sky that seemed too close to low. It was pressing down on us. And then I heard it again, that laugh. Faint, distant, but moving. It wasn't behind us anymore. It was all around us. I stopped for a second, trying to listen. The air itself seemed to hum, like something alive was breathing beside my ear. Then, out of nowhere, I saw it ripple spreading across the shallow water at my feet, though nothing had touched it. My uncle turned, his face pale and slick with sweat. "Don't look down," he whispered, though I didn't understand why. And that's when something cold brushed my ankle. It felt like a hand, thin, long fingers, gripping for a moment before letting go. I screamed, stumbled backward, and nearly fell. My uncle caught me, his hands shaking. The lantern's flame flickered again, and for a second, just beneath the water surface, I saw faces. Dozens of faces, eyes open, mouths moving, but no sound came out. They floated there, their expressions twisted in agony, bubbles rising from their lips, and when the lantern light hit them directly, they all looked up at me together. The flame went out. Darkness swallowed us. I could hear my uncle whispering prayers under his breath. I tried to speak, but my voice came out broken. All I could smell was that same salt, strong and burning, like sea air mixed with blood. Then, from the darkness, a voice whispered, "You took one of ours." It wasn't my uncle's voice. It wasn't even close. The water in front of us started to glow faintly, not from the lantern, but from beneath the surface. A pale bluish light shimmered, showing outlines of shapes moving below. Something rose slowly from the water again. Not a man this time, but something far worse. It had no clear face, just a shifting blur of skin and scales. Its arms were too long, stretching out toward the shore, dripping black liquid that hissed as it touched the ground. Where its eyes should have been, there were only two burning red orbs. My uncle lifted his hands and screamed, "Stay away!" I didn't mean to. Before he could finish, the creature let out a shrill sound, part scream, part wave crash, and suddenly, a powerful wind blew through the trees. The reeds bent flat, the water erupted like boiling oil, and we were thrown to the ground. I tasted mud, dirt, and something metallic. Blood. Maybe. When I opened my eyes, the creature was standing on the water. It didn't walk, it floated. The waves rose higher around it, though there was no storm. It pointed one of its long, bony arms at my uncle. "You drew blood from the bound," it hissed. "Now, blood must answer." My uncle fell to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. I tried to pull him up, but he was frozen, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Then, suddenly, the ground beneath us gave way. The canal widened. No, it wasn't a canal anymore. It was endless. A dark, rolling ocean spread in every direction, though we were still standing where the water should have been knee-deep. Waves the size of houses crashed silently in the distance, their movement slow and unreal, like time itself had broken. The creature disappeared into that darkness, but its voice stayed echoing like it came from inside my own head. "You should not have entered our water." Then everything went black. When I woke up, it was dawn. Birds were chirping again. The air smelled fresh, as if nothing had happened. My uncle was beside me, sitting quietly, staring blankly into the canal. His couch lay broken in half beside him. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, he said in a low voice, "It wasn't a fish." And for the first time, I realized, we hadn't just lost our way. We had crossed into their place, and somehow, they had followed us back. For days after that night, the air around our house felt heavier, as if something unseen was breathing with us, watching us. My uncle barely spoke. He just sat on the porch, staring at the canal in the distance. His eyes were swollen, red, and distant, like he was still seeing the water even when he wasn't near it. The first few days, we thought he was just shaken, but then things began to happen. It started small. At night, we'd hear soft splashes from the back of the house, even though there was no pond, no rain, no water nearby. The sound was rhythmic, like footsteps in shallow water. Then one night, my uncle woke up screaming. I rushed into his room. He was standing by the window, shaking violently, his hands dripping with sweat. "They're here," he whispered. "They're standing in the yard. Can't you see them?" I looked out. Nothing. Only the faint outline of the bamboo fence, and beyond that, the empty dark. But his face. His eyes were wide with pure horror. He wasn't lying. He was seeing something. After that, my uncle refused to sleep. He kept muttering strange words, sometimes in a language I didn't recognize. He'd scratch symbols into the wall, circles, waves, and strange markings that looked like eyes. One morning, we found fish scattered across our yard dead, dry, and cracked, as if they'd been lying under the sun for days. No one knew how they got there. The smell was unbearable. The same day, my uncle fainted, whispering one sentence over and over. "They want me back. They're calling from the water." At night, the whispers began. Sometimes I'd hear my name being called softly, like from a distance, "Come here," always from the direction of the canal. Sometimes I'd hear my uncle's voice calling for help, but when I went to check, he was sitting silently, staring at the wall. One evening, the power went out. The house went completely dark. I lit a candle and saw my uncle sitting by the door, motionless. His eyes were open wide, pupils small, fixed on something outside. I followed his gaze and froze. There were wet footprints leading from the yard into the house. Each step glistened in the candlelight, dripping slowly, as if something invisible had just walked in. The flame flickered violently. My uncle started whispering. "They're angry. They said I broke the bond." He pointed toward the door. "They want blood." That night, the wind howled like the ocean. Our small house shook, and from outside, I heard a splash, not like a fish, but like something huge had fallen into water that shouldn't even be there. I looked out the window and saw the ground shimmering as if the land itself had turned to dark, rippling waves. My uncle rushed outside before I could stop him. "Don't!" I shouted, but it was too late. He stood in the middle of the yard, looking at something only he could see. Then he dropped to his knees and started laughing, a low, broken sound that made my skin crawl. His laughter turned into screams, then stopped altogether. The next morning, we found him lying unconscious by the canal. His body was cold, soaked, though there had been no rain that night. After that, he was never the same again. He stopped recognizing people. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, walking straight toward the water like he was being called. We had to tie him to his bed. Sometimes he'd smile and say, "They're waiting for me under the waves. They said I'll breathe like them soon." My mother took him to several doctors. Nothing helped. Finally, a local Kabiri spiritual healer was called. The old man arrived at dusk, holding a bundle of herbs and a clay pot of oil. The moment he stepped inside, his expression changed. He looked at my uncle once and said softly, "He's touched by something that doesn't belong here." He lit incense, sprinkled salt water around the room, and began chanting. The air grew colder. The candle beside him flickered wildly, though there was no wind. My uncle began to shake, his head snapping from side to side. Suddenly, in a voice that wasn't his, he shouted, "You cannot take him away. He killed one of us. He must pay." The voice was deep, echoing, nothing human. The Kabiri kept chanting, his voice steady despite the chaos. The air was vibrating, the smell of burnt salt filling the room. Then, from the corner, we heard a splash. Water was seeping from the floor. It spread quickly, forming a small pool under my uncle's bed. Inside it, tiny ripples moved on their own. The Kabiri drew symbols with oil on the wall, then whispered, "They're not done yet." He struck one of their kind. "They will take him unless a price is paid." He told us the truth that the fish my uncle had speared wasn't a fish at all, but a jinn, a spirit bound to the water. The strike had broken a sacred rule, and now, the others, the jinn's family, were seeking revenge. The Kabiri said there was only one way to stop them. "Go back to the place of the strike," he said. "Offer them peace, or they will never stop calling." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like water dripping. Every gust of wind carried that same whisper. "You took one of ours." And though I shut my ears, I knew one thing. The curse had already begun. The night before we went back to the canal, I didn't sleep at all. The house was silent, but I could feel them outside, waiting. The air itself had changed. It no longer smelled like rain or grass. It smelled like salt, like the sea. My uncle sat on the floor beside his bed, head hanging low, whispering under his breath. His lips moved fast, almost like he was speaking to someone unseen. His eyes were swollen, and the skin around them had turned dark, almost purple. The Kabiri returned just before dawn. He brought with him a large clay pot filled with oil, incense sticks, a bag of rice, and some sacred herbs. But the most unsettling thing was his face calm. but grim. He didn't look at my uncle directly. "The deal must be made," he said quietly. "The jinns want balance. If they don't get what they ask for, he won't survive another night." He told us exactly what needed to be done. At the very spot where my uncle had struck the fish, we had to make an offering of full goat and 100 kilograms of sweet rice. It had to be placed right beside the water at sunset. No talking, no turning back, no looking into the water. If anyone disobeyed, the jinns would take them too. That evening, we carried everything to the canal. The sky was red, not the warm red of sunset, but a deep, unnatural shade, like the horizon itself was bleeding. The closer we got to the water, the colder it became. I could hear faint voices coming from the wind, though no one else seemed to react. When we reached the spot, the Kabir-I drew a large circle on the ground using white ash. Inside the circle, we placed the goat and the sweets. The moment the last item touched the ground, the water's surface rippled. Even though there was no wind, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The Kabir-I began chanting in a deep voice, words that seemed older than time itself. The smoke from the incense drifted across the canal, curling like fingers. The goat grew restless, pulling at its rope, bleeding in panic. Then, everything stopped. No wind, no insects, no sound. The Kabir-I raised his hand for silence. The water in front of us began to move again. Slow, deliberate ripple spreading outward from the center. I leaned forward just a little and froze. Something was rising, a shape tall, dark, and dripping. It wasn't solid, not entirely. It shimmered, shifting between shadow and water, like it was made of liquid darkness. I could make out its face, pale and long, with hollow eyes that glowed a dull crimson. It stood just above the surface, its reflection twisted and broken. The air smelled of salt and blood. My uncle fell to his knees, trembling. He began to cry. I didn't mean to hurt him, he shouted. I thought it was a fish. The thing tilted its head slowly, the movement unnatural, too slow, too perfect. From the water, other figures began to appear, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all with the same red eyes, the same silent faces. They stood behind the first one, staring at us. The Kabir-I threw a handful of salt and rice into the water. The surface hissed like boiling oil. "Forgive him," the old man said firmly. "The blood was not offered in malice. Take this offering and leave his body." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the lead figure raised one long, dripping arm and pointed at my uncle. Its voice came like a rumble beneath the earth. "He drew blood from our kin. His debt is sealed." My uncle screamed, clutching his head. Blood trickled from his nose and ears. The Kabir-I shouted louder, chanting faster. The incense sticks caught fire by themselves, flames leaping high, the smell of burning herbs filling the air. "You cannot take him," the Kabir-I roared. "The offering is made. Leave this place." A gust of wind exploded across the water, throwing dust and smoke in all directions. I fell backward, covering my face. The goat let out one final cry, then silence. When I looked up, the figures were gone. Only the water remained, calm and still as glass. The Kabir-I stood motionless for a moment, then turned to me. "It's done," he whispered. "They have taken what they needed." He told us to leave everything behind. The food, the blood, even the lanterns. "Do not look back," he warned. "No matter what you hear." As we walked away, I could swear I heard laughter, soft, fading, but it was there. That night, my uncle finally slept for the first time in weeks. When he woke up the next morning, the dark circles under his eyes were gone. He smiled faintly and said, "They're gone." The Kabir-I confirmed it. "The sea spirits have accepted your peace." Life slowly returned to normal, but there was something in my uncle that never fully came back. Sometimes, in the middle of a quiet evening, I'd catch him staring toward the canal, eyes unfocused, whispering something I couldn't hear. And sometimes, when the nights are especially still, and still smell that salt in the wind, and hear that same faint laughter echoing from far beyond the water. "You took one of ours, and we took something from you too." The end. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? subscribe to the Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right here on the Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to the Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.